You are listening to episode 59 of the Style and Stewardship podcast. On this episode, I'm talking about all the things that I have personally found to clutter my life. And in the culture that we live in the modern world that we find ourselves in, we are just so easily consumed by doing so many things. And then we try to come in with words like balance, and we are all looking, I believe, for this way of living intentionally so we don't feel the pressure or the burden of things that we shouldn't be carrying anyway. Sometimes we have to assess where we are in life, what's in our hands right now, and what is really a priority because everything can't be or nothing is. So, listening to this episode, I hope that it encourages you. You're listening to the Style and Stewardship podcast. So, what is stewardship? That is exactly what we'll be talking about in each and every episode of this podcast. As Christ followers, I think it's so important that we manage every single area of our lives to the best of our ability. Not perfectly, but intentionally in our own unique way, and holding on to God's grace every single step of our journey. On this podcast, I'll be sharing thoughts, things that God's teaching me, and transparent talks. My hope is that when you listen, you'll feel equipped, you'll be encouraged, and more than anything, I hope that you're inspired to live out your day-to-day calling in your own unique way. This podcast is for the woman who wants to hear, "Well done." In our modern culture, I truly believe that we have allowed certain things into our lives that don't add to them, they just add things to them. So when I say it doesn't add to our lives, I mean it doesn't enrich our lives, or it's something that takes away from our lives being full in the right way. What's been on my mind lately is a word that just will not leave me alone, which is how Style and Stewardship even began. And I hope that it can be just an encouragement to you of where I am, where I kind of see many of us are, and that is having full lives, but not necessarily enjoying the life that we live. It's almost like, if I could give you a visual, because I love visuals, it's almost like we're living in the margins of our own lives. That's how I've felt lately. And just about 2 months ago, literally 2 months ago, and I said this to my husband, I was saying, I feel this need, I almost feel desperate for simplicity. And our lives are very full. We travel a lot, and I homeschool, and I have a small business, and there are doing the podcast and so many other things. And I realized that the rest of my life has got to support the things that I truly want to do and the things that I truly feel like I'm supposed to do. And I just had this thought, and it's something I've been praying about, and I even prayed about, should I even share this on the podcast? And I felt like, yeah, I need to. So it is it's simplifying, and I talk about managing what matters most. And what I am guilty of is it's almost like I treat everything equal, as though everything's a priority. And if I have decided that I'm going to do something, even if it's 11 things, I still attempt to do all of those things. And this isn't like jack of all trades, master of none. I'm not talking about anything like that, but I am talking about in my specific life is trying to manage too many things at one time. And I've said this to you before on this podcast, and I'll link those in the show notes about you can't do everything, and actually creating space to steward well. And you may have heard me, if this is not your first time listening to the podcast. If it is, welcome and hello. But I use the word capacity a lot. And the definition of capacity is the maximum amount something can contain. But the problem with that is that word capacity, I feel like there should be like a secondary definition, and maybe I should have looked that up. I just looked up that one. But if I could explain it, it's more or less like you have this, those flex bags. They're like trash bags, but there's like there's some sort of material in them where you can literally stuff more stuff into it. And yes, it can fit all of those things, but even though it can flex to those, to the place where you can shove more and more into this bag, it doesn't mean that bag hasn't already hit capacity. It has. What's happening is we're just forcing more into it. And I find that a lot of us live our lives that way. Sometimes it's something that we have allowed to happen. Other times it's outside things that have caused that to happen. But when it all comes down to it, the fact of the matter is most of us can operate beyond our capacity, and we keep doing so. And so much so, it's almost like we're on the periphery of our own lives because all of this other stuff has to get done. And it gets to a place where we have to almost take extreme measures to get time to ourselves, time to think. Rest isn't really a thing. It's more like we just kind of collapse from doing it all, doing all the things, as they say. And I have found that to be true in my own life. And I've done things like that as well. And recognizing, I talk about seasons all the time as well. Recognizing what season we're in is so important. But I thought, how can I share this with you as an encouragement? And I figured I would just use myself as an example, as I do on almost every other episode, of how I'm stewarding and how I'm trying to steward being more of an essentialist, somewhat a minimalist, somewhat just trying to simplify and truly live intentional. And living intentional means that we are I'm trying to say intentional without defining intentional again, but it feels impossible right at the moment. But for us to get really, really just focused on what matters most is my point. And that's hard to do without taking effort. And that's the thing with the modern culture that we live in, and with the different demands on our time. It's time to kind of get shrewd and discerning about what we allow into our lives, what needs to stay on in the margins of our lives, as opposed to us living in those margins. And I think that when it comes down to balance and all of these different things, there's so many different ideas that are just popping into my head right now, even though I do have notes. But the word balance is thrown around, and I don't ascribe to that, because I truly believe that when we're saying balance, many times we're feeling out of quote unquote balance, but all things can't be held equally. I think more so we're looking for the word harmony and peace and rest, more so than we need balance. Because balance is like, how can I continue doing everything that I'm doing at the same level? And we can't. It's something that I had to have life kind of slap me in the face over and get really real with myself. I remember saying to my husband that when I finally do get time to myself, I don't even necessarily do all those things that I dreamt of doing when I didn't have that time, because I don't have the energy to do it, whether it is a physical energy I don't have or the mental capacity to do it, because my imagination is gone. Those little pockets of time where I felt inspired, or I felt like, I can't wait to share this, or, I need to record that video, or whatever those things may be for me. Or I have jewelry literally sitting on my desk that I've made, and I have not had the time. And when I say time, I don't necessarily mean time as in the clock. I mean, I don't have the capacity. I don't have the energy. I don't have the excess to be able to spend the time that I may have off doing something where I feel like I'm on again, if that I think you're getting where I'm going with all of this. But I think that our lives can give us symptoms of fatigue, and that's one of them. Sometimes our body can keep going, or our mind even can keep going, but then we get to a stopping place where we're actually able to have a break or a rest, and we feel like I can't do another thing. I can't do another thing. There's this thing called dry bar comedy, and my husband, he showed me this video, and it cracks me up every single time. And if I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes. But he basically says, you're in Costco and you are meandering around miles and miles going through this store, and for whatever reason you get to the parking lot and you don't take that buggy back to where it goes. It's almost like you said, not another step, and you leave that buggy there. And that is how that is exactly how I feel sometimes when I do have the opportunity, but the opportunity doesn't match the energy that I have, or the lack of energy that I have from doing the most. So how can we simplify? How can I simplify? One of the things that I realized was, just because I can do something, I know all of this is going to sound to someone right now who's awesome at managing all the things. This may sound to you like, duh, is that not common sense? Well, to all of us, it is not. I am one of those people that will just jam pack in a bunch of things. It's almost as though I will find the complicated way to do something, and I will do that as if there are no other options. My husband is the exact opposite when it comes to that. He is so systematic in everything that he does. I am more of the dreamer. And if you're anything like me, you understand what it is to feel and believe in your own imagination that you can do all of the things and then some, and then bake the cookies for the bake sale. Like, that is how my brain works. And then when reality hits, or my kid has one of those moments that he has, and I'm just like, my brain is fried. I'm done. Like, I ain't put a fork in me. I was literally just saying, when 3:00 hits, for reference, I wake up around 5:30. Most of the time it's like 5:05. So and my kid might pop in my room at like 6. Sometimes, thank God for the last 2 months, he hasn't busted in my room at night, which is awesome. And we've been able to sleep and wake up on our own accord. But this is literally just within the last couple of months. So you feel like, okay, I've been up since 5 something or whatever. By the time 3:00 rolls around or 6:00 rolls around and the whole dinner routine happens, stick a fork in me. I'm done. Like, it's almost as though my brain is like, not another step. Like that comedian said, it's like, I can't, it's like, I don't know what happens, but it's like a switch goes off and I am done. I begin to get irritable and agitated, and all the things that I handled all day long and really well, all of a sudden it's like, nope, not again, nope, no more. My brain's like, cannot compute. Like, it is starting to shut down emotionally. The patience that I had all day, I don't have it anymore. It is gone. So one of the things that I realized was, I have got to outsource some things. And by outsource, I don't mean like I have a maid or anything like that, which, hats off to you if you can do that. Awesome. I'm weird about people I don't know being in my house. That's just me. I'm a homebody. I don't want you in my house if I don't know you. So anyways, instead of jam packing all the things that I may be capable of, realizing that it's not wise to assume I have the capacity for that, or to become like that bag that can continue to stretch. And though it has not ripped at the seams, we all know, if just the right sharp implement or thing that you discarded goes into that bag and pokes the hole in just the right place, regardless of how much that bag could hold on to, it is now like a dam being opened and water gushing out, because that trash is going to be all over the place, and it is a way bigger mess to clean up than to segment these things and put them into separate bags instead of trying to force this bag's capacity to go beyond what it should actually have in it. So that leads me to my next point, which is, are you doing what you should be doing, or are you doing what you should be doing? I'm using air quotes, even though you cannot see me. So what do I mean by that? It's like, there are things that you should be doing for your health, for your wellness, for your time, for the relationships in your life, for the different things that you are trying to manage well and manage on purpose. And then there are the things that you quote unquote should be doing. And these are things that are cultural expectations that you've placed on yourself. Maybe they are familial expectations that other people in your family have placed on you. Maybe they are the things that you have placed on yourself based on the goals that you have set for yourself. All of these things, it's almost as though, and I say we, if you're relating to anything that I'm saying right now, I'm saying we, I'm inviting you into this. You're welcome. But if you can relate to any of this, when I say we are adding things to our lives that don't necessarily have to be there, and we don't necessarily have to be the ones to do them. Are we actually allowing for rest? Are we actually allowing for capacity for our emotions, for our minds? Or are we acting like we are a bunch of robots who, because we can do these things, that we should do these things? We shouldn't do everything. So there are ways that we can really look at our lives as a whole, but I think it makes way more sense to look at our lives on the most base level. And then saying, okay, have I met the criteria of what, not just what it takes for me to function every day, because I think many of us are doing that. We're just functioning every day. Or am I actually allowing a rhythm and a flow in my life where I feel like I have room to breathe? Or do I feel like the next thing that gets added to my plate is going to be like that sharp point in that bag that's going to make everything come out? And I think a lot of people are operating that way. And I feel like I've caught myself right before I've gotten to that point, to be honest with you. And I truly believe it is because I was given the opportunity to see what it is that I'm doing, and to realize, okay, yeah, you could keep going at the pace that you're going, but whose pace is that? And who's responsible for setting that, or for rejecting, even if it's an expectation of a pace that others are putting on me? And I'm just kind of hypothetically speaking right now, because there's too many things to put in one podcast episode. Let me just be real. But so I'm going to use homeschool, for example. I am going to homeschool my kid all year round, because we had a 2-3 week break, something like that. Not because we had a vacation, but just because I took a vacation from doing those things. Because I just said to myself, what, could you keep doing this? But who says that you have to? And they're almost, I think women, we're just naturally like this, where we can take on a lot and we can handle a lot, and we are, I believe, amazing multitaskers. And I don't mean task switchers. I mean like multitasking, like we can do several things at one time. And I truly believe that God made us like that, because whether we have our own children or not, God has given us that nurturing ability and that ability to care for others, whether that is our own child, whether that's someone else's child, whether that's a niece, a nephew, a small group, whatever the case may be. I believe that God made us very different, and he made us in a way that there are things that we can do that our husbands cannot do. Like, seriously, ask my husband. He calls me from the grocery store and asks me what aisle something is on, because we remember things like that. So anyways, I'm not even sure where I was going with that, but you're also welcome again, I guess. So anyways, just circling back to the idea of putting more things on ourselves than we actually need to, and not taking the time necessary to say, who told me that? Like, who told me I had to do all of that? Like, who said I have to do all that? I remember years and years ago, I would bake bread from scratch because it was healthier. And if I'm a certified holistic nutritionist, but before that, I was someone who just read health books for fun. And I would make bread from scratch because it's healthier and it's better for you, and the nutrients are more bioavailable. It's not sitting in a package for literally 3 to 6 months on a shelf somewhere with all the different gums and all this. Don't get me started. Stuff that's in that bread where it does not mold. That's not normal, believe it or not. So anyways, and I started making bread from scratch, and I will never forget it. I was baking bread, and I was making a bunch of stuff in the kitchen. I love to cook, and I love to feed people, and I love to eat too. So I'm doing all this stuff, and I remember my husband saying to me, I was telling him I was just flustered one day, and I was just annoyed and irritated, and he was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "I think I'm just tired." And it took him telling me, "Babe, you don't have to make everything from scratch, right? And you do know you don't have to come up with a completely different meal. You're more of the foodie than I am, and I'll eat the same thing every day. I don't even care." He was like, "Don't get me wrong, your food is delicious, but you don't have to do all that." But it was almost as though I signed up for a program nobody knew about but me, and an expectation that nobody else knew about but me. And it took my husband saying, "You don't have to do all that," it was almost like a light shone in the dark. And it was like, oh, wait. Yeah, I don't. Why did I start doing this? All of it from scratch? I don't have to do all of it from scratch. And we ladies, many of us hold ourselves to, if I'm going to be real, not realistic expectations. And it's not that we can't do it, because we can. And I think that therein lies the problem. It's because it's because we know that we can do something that we decide, okay, well, I'll do it. It's like, I'll just hop in and do this thing, even though someone else could possibly do it. I remember having a conversation with my mom not long ago, and I remember saying to her, she was really tired and she was making a bunch of things. And I remember saying to her, "Mom, somebody else can do that." And her looking at me like, "Well, they're not going to do it right." And I thought, well, that's kind of a chance that you take to have a break. And it's so funny and ironic because these things kind of play back over to me. And as much as I want to be on this podcast encouraging you, I will never not share the things that I have difficulties with, and the things that I'm personally trying to walk through, and the things that I'm trying to steward well. And when it comes to stewardship, it takes being intentional. It's not a list of things that we do. It is our motivation in our heart and our perspective of who we're doing it for. And it's not about perfection, and it's not about doing everything, because I don't believe that God calls us to do everything. He says, whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do all to the glory of God. So this is one of those things that are up to us. When the stewards, but well, essentially, yeah. When these 3 individuals were given these talents to do something with, it was up to them what they did and how they did it. It was up to them of how they increased this talent that they were given, this money that they were given. It was up to them of how they invested their time in investing that talent that was given to them. If you're not familiar with the whole concept of this podcast, I'll leave episode 1 in the show notes about what style and stewardship is about. And so when it comes to stewarding, it's almost like we have to, in our lives in general, it's like reassess where we are, not just where we are, but what we're trying to hold in that season and what we're trying to manage in that season, and taking it back to God and saying, like, is this something that I even need to be doing right now? Can someone else do this? Am I doing this in the most efficient way or the most beneficial way to myself and to those that are around me? And I think that when we're trying to do the most and we're doing everything, something is falling through the cracks. So if that is, we're overextending ourselves, and don't get me wrong, we all have busy seasons and full seasons, and I understand that, but we can still be intentional even in the busyness of that, of what we choose to add onto our plate, even in the midst of what we're doing. So sometimes that may be giving yourself some grace and saying, what, I'm going to cook 2 days out of the week, and the other, we're going to have to figure that out. If someone else is capable of making sandwiches, it might be soup and sandwich, or it might be if someone else can, if you usually wash your car by hand, I'm just throwing out really random things that are popping in my mind. But if you are someone who typically washes your car by hand, it might mean going through the drive-thru to get your car washed instead. Or if you are someone who goes to 5 different grocery stores or 5 different stores to get the things that you need, it might mean, how can I find this online? And maybe I do some sort of like subscribe and save thing, like on Amazon. I used to do that, and have that delivered to my house. So it's not something that I have to think about, and we can kind of get in front of some of like the decision fatigue of doing all these different things. Maybe handing some of these things off to our family members and saying, hey, can you do this? Or I need you to do this. Or if somebody else doesn't do this, this other thing isn't going to happen. I don't know what it may be in your household, but just really looking at our lives as a whole and not seeing how much we can jam pack into our lives, because something's going to suffer. And many times I believe we take that quote unquote suffering on ourselves, and we like to call it something like humility, but it's really pride masquerading around like humility, because we feel like somebody else can't do what we're doing, or we don't want to depend on someone else to do it, which also is a pride issue. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So that is really what I want to encourage you with, is really taking a look. How many times can I say really? But taking a look at your life, seeing what it is full of, and see where you can simplify in your own life. In what ways can you simplify? In what ways can you take something off your plate, delegate it to someone else, or stop doing it for a season? The weather itself can't support certain things. So we call them summer squash for a reason. And you have to plant them right before summer gets here, and they have their germination and all of those things, and they have a certain amount of time. So when summer is here, they are ripe because they have already been doing the work underneath the ground, and they're producing the right part of that plant within that season. So when the fullness of that season comes, the fullness of that fruit can come. And I'm talking to myself, as well as I hope that it is encouraging someone else out there. I hope it is encouraging you. One of the things that I'm doing right now to simplify is one of the things that I spoke about, actually. And that is reducing the amount of time that I am cooking. As much as I love to cook, that is something that it takes a lot of time and a lot of physical effort and sometimes some mental effort too. So I have started repeating some meals, and my husband, he is always on board for that. He's like, I'll eat the same thing every day. I don't even care. So I have gotten to the place where I've started buying some things offline, so they come straight to my house, so I don't even have to think about it. One of those things, I use this company called Butcher Box, and I get organic, grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and I get that delivered to my house once every 6 weeks, and I get like the big box of it so it can last. I've also started adding their pasture-raised chicken, which ends up being cheaper with them than even at Costco, which I also like to get a lot of my organic meat from. I have stopped making everything from scratch, and I've started purchasing, I can't say that word right now. I have begun to purchase certain things. And then I have tried to find alternatives in case I don't want to go to another store, because ingredients with food are super important to me. So typically I'll go to like 5 different stores, I'm not exaggerating, to get specific items. So if that means I change some of the things that we eat so I can get everything from that one store that I'm at, then that is what I will do. If I can buy something that is non-perishable online to be an option, I've started doing that. And I use Vitacost, and I use Amazon a lot for that, for some of the dry goods that we use. I'm trying to think what else. And now when it comes to homeschooling, I have decided that I am just going to buy curriculum instead of creating my own, because yes, I know, like a crazy person, I was creating my own curriculum. And I even said it to my husband, and he was just like, what's taking more effort and more of your time, more of your mental energy than you looking for the curriculum that you're going to use with our son? And I'm like, you're right. I spent literal hours researching, checking out YouTube videos of different people and their comparisons and all of these things. And when he said that to me, it was like, you know what? I'm going to buy this one. It's at a decent price. It's hitting all of the high notes that it needs to for his education. I have some supplemental things from this past year that I can review and continue doing with him, and building upon those things that are already there with the foundation that I've tried to lay with him thus far. And guess what? I had to say this to myself. You can change your mind. And I hope that this gives someone out there, anyone out there, permission. You can change your mind. This is all to the benefit of yourself, your own wellness, your own mental, emotional capacity, and just an encouragement that just because you start one way does not mean that you're in such a fixed place that you don't have the freedom to change your mind and try something different. So I probably used 1,000,000 words to say something that I probably could have taken maybe 200 to say. But on this podcast, I am going to be as real and transparent as I possibly can be, obviously with wisdom. I can't tell you guys everything. There's still so much that I don't say. And I just really wanted to remind you that you can give yourself permission and a pass to unclutter your life and to simplify your life. I believe that I'm actually going to share a bit more about simplifying in different areas, from wellness to our health and nutrition, to our homes, to our hearts, to the way that we just speak to God and have prayer time and devotional time and all of those things, because I truly believe that it is way easier now with so many different options for so many different things to clutter our lives with needless things and things that are not truly needful. It's really, really easy to do. Am I necessarily a minimalist? No. Am I necessarily someone who's like gonna get rid of everything that they own? Yeah, not so much. However, I am simplifying, and I encourage you to simplify so that you can truly manage what matters most and really enjoy and live your life in the fullness of your life, as opposed to just kind of being in the margins, wondering why you're fatigued, wondering why other areas of your life are taking a hit. And most of the time, I truly believe it's because we have not created space or allowed space or rest or mental margin, physical margin, or any of those things so that we can truly, truly steward well. So I hope that this has been beneficial for you to listen to today. I hope your day is amazing, and I hope that you are able to create space where you need to so that you can steward all the areas in your life that God is calling you to steward, and manage and steward them on purpose with intentionality, and to manage them well. If you got anything from this podcast, or if you enjoy listening to it and you think that you know someone that may also enjoy it, please share it with a friend. And until next time, your life matters, what you do with it matters, so what will you steward well?